So cracks Thor the Destroyer shows up in his obsidian warship covered in skulls, ready to conquer Earth Station Alpha. He expects trembling fear and immediate surrender. Instead, he gets Marcus Thompson with a clipboard asking about parking permits and hostile intent declarations. The universe's deadliest war beast suddenly finds himself filling out Form 27B. How did humanity's most boring bureaucracy become our greatest defense? You know, when an obsidian warship covered in the skulls of countless species looms over your station, you'd expect panic. That's usually how these things go. Cracks Thor's vessel slid into Earth Station Alpha's docking bay like a mechanical porcupine bristling with energy weapons, each turret angled for maximum intimidation. The ship's surface absorbed the station lights, a black hole of polished intimidation that had made entire civilizations surrender before a single shot fired. The war beast stood on his command deck, already composing the victory speech in his mind. He anticipated the universal terror that had preceded his 1,000 conquests. The scrambling defense forces, the emergency broadcasts, the satisfying chaos of a population realizing their doom had arrived. His sensory arrays were tuned to detect elevated heart rates, adrenal spikes, the chemical signatures of pure fear flooding 100 life support systems. But the station's response wasn't military readiness or screams of fear. The scanner returns showed maintenance crews continuing their rounds. Docking clamps remained in their neutral position. The only movement was a service drone polishing the observation deck windows, completely unconcerned by the warship that could vaporize it with a stray energy discharge. The ship's shadow fell across the bay like a funeral shroud. But the lights on the control tower didn't even flicker. This immediate mismatch between expectation and reality does something interesting to a conqueror's psychology. When you're prepared for resistance and get indifference instead, it creates a cognitive disconnect that's more disarming than any weapon. Cracks Thor found himself checking his own sensors, wondering if perhaps he'd accidentally entered stealth mode, or if his translation systems were malfunctioning. The silence felt heavier than any bombardment. He cleared his throat, preparing to deliver his standard conquest announcement about planetary subjugation and acceptable surrender terms. But the comm channel crackled to life before he could speak. Instead of a military challenge or panicked inquiry, he received a routine docking inquiry spoken in the flattest human tone imaginable. The voice asked him to state his business, confirm his cargo manifest, and provide estimated departure time. It was the same greeting they'd give a bulk cargo hauler from the Martian colonies. The galactic terror had met something far more unsettling than fear: bureaucratic indifference. His weapons remained charged. His boarding parties stood ready, but the expected battlefield had failed to materialize. Instead, he found himself looking at a digital form requesting his ship's registration number and purpose of visit. And that's when the real weaponization began. Let me tell you about Marcus Thompson. He's the docking controller, and his armor is a laminated ID badge. His weapons are binding arbitration clauses, environmental compliance forms, and that sacred text of orbital administration, the Station Operations Manual. He handles the arrival of a galactic-scale menace the same way he'd handle a late bread delivery, as a Tuesday morning paperwork ordeal that's messing with his coffee break schedule. Cracks. Thor tries to impose his reputation through the comm system, listing conquered worlds and extinguished stars in a voice that had made hardened warlords surrender their fleets. Marcus listens patiently, then counters with docking checklist item 4C, visitor intent documentation. The warbeast's thunderous declaration of impending domination meets the soft click of Marcus checking a box on his digital clipboard. I mean, it's like a tiger trying to roar at a tax auditor. The auditor just sighs and asks for the forms in triplicate. This is where bureaucratic systems function as psychological equalizers, stripping away all the emotional leverage from what should be a dramatic confrontation. The destroyer of worlds finds himself reduced to answering questions about his ship's mass distribution and primary energy source. Marcus runs through the standard sequence: temporary docking permits, safety briefings, emergency evacuation procedures. Then he gets to that beautiful masterpiece of red tape, the hostile intent declaration form. Cracks Thor's bravado begins to visibly crumble under the weight of union rules and cheerful human compliance. Every attempt to escalate the situation meets another politely worded request for information. His battle-hardened claws, capable of shredding starship hulls, now hover uncertainly over the touchscreen displaying Form 27B. The section about planned duration of hostile activities seems to particularly confuse him. He's conquered civilizations with less effort than this form requires. The Warbeast finds himself providing details he'd never shared with his own military advisors. Weapons specifications, troop complement, even his ship's toilet capacity for the environmental impact assessment. Marcus notes each answer with the same neutral professionalism he'd use for a commercial freighter. There's no fear, no awe, just the quiet efficiency of someone who's done this paperwork 3 times already this week. The conqueror of 1,000 worlds has been completely disarmed by a request for his mothership's maximum occupancy rating. But the bureaucratic gauntlet was just the first layer of defense. Marcus finishes the form, stamps the digital approval, and then mentions there's just the small matter of parking arrangements. So the deadliest being in 5-star systems finds himself discussing parking logistics. Marcus assigns the Obsidian warship to Space B7, noting it's a compact spot between a water reclamation vessel and a scientific survey craft. He explains the station's grid system with the patient tone of someone who's given these directions 1,000 times, mentioning the yellow guidance lines and the automatic docking assist that will help position the ship. The location puts the warship's primary weapons array uncomfortably close to a bulkhead, its intimidating silhouette now just another vehicle in need of proper storage. Craxthor insists his ship will fit anywhere it desires, a statement of power that clashes directly with station safety regulations. His voice rumbles through the comm system about how his vessel has parked in the atmospheres of gas giants and nestled against asteroids large enough to crush moons. He describes maneuvering through asteroid fields that would shred lesser ships, all to emphasize that this simple docking assignment is beneath his vessel's capabilities. The declaration hangs in the air, waiting for the deference it normally commands. Marcus remains unfazed, explaining overflow parking options in Sector Gamma with the same flat efficiency. He mentions the additional paperwork required for non-standard parking and the station's towing policies for non-compliant vessels. His tone suggests he's had this exact conversation with rookie pilots who thought their modified freighters deserve special treatment, the cosmic equivalent of trying to park a semi-truck in a compact car space at the DMV. Except here the DMV has the authority to impound your planet killer if you block the fire lane. Spatial management and logistics often reveal more about a civilization's organizational prowess than its weaponry ever could. The station's parking system represents years of refinement, accounting for everything from thruster wash contamination to emergency evacuation routes. Each space has been calculated with precision that would impress most naval architects, balancing efficiency with safety in ways that militarized cultures rarely consider. The destroyer of worlds finds himself verifying measurements he's never had to calculate before, confirming his ship's turning radius and thruster clearance distances. Conquest gets postponed for a parking permit. Craxthor's navigation officers suddenly find themselves consulting engineering schematics they hadn't reviewed since the ship's commissioning. They're measuring antenna clearance and calculating the angle of their dorsal fins relative to overhead conduits. The Warbeast himself approves the final parking position, his massive head inclined toward a screen showing his terrifying warship neatly tucked between 2 civilian transports. The submission isn't to military force but to organizational necessity, and just when he thought it couldn't get more humiliating, he heard the sound. A soft, rhythmic noise from somewhere deeper in the station, a mechanical hum followed by a scraping sound that seemed to cut through the administrative absurdity. It was a sound that didn't belong in a place of cosmic confrontation. Something mundane yet strangely compelling that pulled at his attention despite the parking negotiations still underway. That's when Craxthor heard it, a sound that made his alien blood run cold. Frustrated and bewildered by the parking bureaucracy, the Warbeast had retreated from the docking control center into the station's maintenance corridors. He moved through the sterile white passageways, his massive form barely clearing the ceiling panels. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and cleaning solvents, a stark contrast to the smoky battlefields he normally inhabited. His claws clicked against the polished floor as he followed the source of the disturbance, each step taking him further from the confrontation he expected and closer to something entirely unexpected. The rhythmic pattern pulled him forward. Twist, scrape, hum, repeat. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the station's background noise with strange clarity. His sensory organs evolved to detect predator movements across continental distances, focused on this mundane mechanical rhythm. His natural armor tightened defensively, like a clam sensing a predator's approach, though no immediate threat registered on his combat scanners. The sound seemed to bypass his conscious processing and trigger older, more primal defense mechanisms buried deep in his evolutionary history. Certain repetitive sounds can trigger psychological responses that date back to precognitive development stages. The consistent rhythm suggested ritual or preparation, while the scraping quality implied sharpening or honing. For a species whose evolutionary history included both predator and prey roles, such auditory patterns often signal imminent danger or hunting activity. The warbeast's nervous system responded with increased alertness, his combat systems coming online despite the absence of visible threats. His internal temperature rose slightly, a physiological response he hadn't experienced since his first combat trial decades earlier. He expected to find a weapons lab behind the next bulkhead, or perhaps a torture chamber where humans perfected their interrogation techniques. His imagination supplied images of energy weapon maintenance or blade sharpening stations, where soldiers prepared their combat gear. The sound quality suggested metal on metal, but with a wooden undertone that confused his audio analysis. He activated his personal defense fields, the energy shimmering around his claws as he prepared to confront whatever terrifying apparatus produced this unnerving rhythm. The warbeast rounded the final corner and found Dave Jenkins, the station's maintenance coordinator, methodically sharpening pencils. The galaxy's most feared destroyer stood frozen, his combat system still primed for a confrontation that didn't exist. Dave sat at a small workbench, his hand moving with automatic precision as he inserted each pencil into the sharpener. Twist to engage the mechanism, scrape of the blade against wood, hum of the small electric motor. Then the perfectly sharpened pencil would emerge. The entire operation looked like something from an elementary school classroom, not a military installation. Dave glanced up from his work, offering a neutral nod before selecting another pencil from the unfinished pile. His movements were economical, practiced, completely ordinary. The warbeast's extensive tactical training hadn't prepared him for this. His threat assessment system cycled through thousands of combat scenarios, none of which involved wood shavings collecting in a small plastic tray. The disconnect between the ominous sound and its mundane source created a cognitive short circuit that left the conqueror momentarily speechless. The maintenance coordinator held up a freshly sharpened pencil, examining the point with a critical eye before adding it to the finished collection. The warbeast's armor remained partially engaged, his system still interpreting the situation as potentially hostile, despite all visual evidence to the contrary. He watched as Dave selected another pencil, his movements perfectly replicating the previous cycle. Twist, scrape, hum. The rhythm continued, now somehow more terrifying in its absolute normalcy. But this wasn't just about pencils. Dave Jenkins wasn't just sharpening pencils. He was performing a masterclass in human precision that would unravel the warbeast's understanding of capability. The maintenance coordinator worked with methodical patience that transformed a simple task into something approaching artistry. Twist to engage the mechanism, scrape of the blade against wood, hum of the small motor, then the inspection of the perfect point. Each movement flowed into the next with economy and grace, his attention completely focused on the work in his hands. He didn't look up at the massive alien filling his workspace, didn't adjust his rhythm for the audience. The ritual continued unchanged. Thor interpreted this as advanced psychological conditioning, a weapon-making ritual reduced to its most terrifying essence. His combat analysis systems tracked the exact repetition of movements, the consistent pressure applied, the identical angle maintained for each pencil. He saw military discipline in the set of Dave's shoulders, tactical precision in the way his fingers never wasted motion. Each perfect point emerged like a tiny spear tip, crafted not for war but for accounting. The warbeast's threat assessment protocols flagged the activity as potential weapons preparation, his systems noting the sharpened wood could theoretically puncture weak points in armor or damage sensitive equipment. The human capacity for turning repetitive tasks into meditative, perfected rituals represents a form of unconscious mastery that many militarized cultures overlook. They focus on overt combat training while missing the fundamental discipline required to achieve consistency in mundane actions. Dave's pencil sharpening demonstrated control that marksmanship instructors spend years trying to instill in recruits. The breathing patterns, the muscle memory, the absolute focus on fundamentals. His hands moved with the certainty of someone who understood his tools intimately, who could feel the grain of the wood through the vibration in the handle, who knew exactly how much pressure to apply for each type of pencil. Dave explained it was about understanding the grain of the wood, the angle needed for different lead hardness, the exact pressure that would create a perfect point without breaking the tip. He spoke without looking up from his work, his voice calm and measured. He mentioned how softer wood required a lighter touch, how cheap pencils needed slower rotation to prevent splintering, how the sound of the blade could tell him when it needed replacement. His knowledge was specific, practical, and utterly comprehensive within its narrow domain. He could probably sharpen pencils blindfolded, judging everything by sound and feel alone. The alien realization arrived like a slow dawn. This wasn't a weapon. It was something far more dangerous. Normalized excellence. Humans perform extraordinary acts without considering them extraordinary. The maintenance coordinator saw nothing remarkable about achieving perfect consistency in his work. He'd likely been sharpening pencils this way for years, refining his technique through repetition until it became second nature. The Warbeast understood that this casual mastery represented a cultural approach to competence that made humanity unpredictably formidable. Their basic skill level started where other species' trained expertise peaked. And then Dave did the unthinkable. He set down the sharpener and selected a fresh pencil from the unfinished pile. Instead of placing it in the machine himself, he extended it toward the Warbeast in a gesture that was neither challenge nor submission. His expression remained neutral, his hand steady. The pencil looked absurdly small, held toward claws that could shred battle armor, a simple wooden cylinder offered to a being who commanded fleets. The Warbeast's combat system still hummed with alertness, but now they had nothing to target except this quiet offering of shared activity. Dave Jenkins offered the galaxy's most feared destroyer a pencil. He didn't present it like a challenge or a gift, just held it out in that neutral human way that suggested shared activity rather than confrontation. His eyes remained on his work. His posture relaxed as if offering writing implements to cosmic conquerors happened every Tuesday afternoon. The pencil looked minuscule in the space between them, a yellow wooden cylinder that seemed to shrink further when contrasted with the Warbeast's battle-scarred claws. Seeing the alien's fascination, Dave gestured toward the sharpener with his free hand, a simple pointing motion that indicated where the pencil should go. His expression stayed neutral, without expectation or pressure. He might have been showing a new intern where to find the coffee maker, his manner that casual. The machine itself was just a basic electric sharpener bolted to the workbench, the kind you'd find in any office supply closet. Nothing about the situation suggested its historical significance was about to unfold. Krax Thor, conqueror of worlds, hesitated before this simple wooden cylinder. His pride wars with his curiosity. The claws that had torn through battle cruisers now hovered uncertainly near the pencil's eraser end. His internal systems still hummed with combat readiness, his threat assessment protocols struggling to categorize this interaction. The conqueror of 1,000 worlds found himself weighing the dignity of his position against the strange compulsion to understand this human ritual. It was like offering a master swordsman a child's training blade, an insult that somehow wasn't, because the offer contained no mockery, only genuine invitation. The act of teaching disarms aggression more effectively than confrontation, creating psychological shifts through shared experience that bypass normal defensive postures. When someone shows you how to do something without judgment or expectation, it creates a temporary neutral space where hierarchies dissolve. Dave's calm demonstration had created this exact space, transforming the maintenance bay from potential battleground to classroom. The Warbeast's combat systems began powering down without conscious command, his posture shifting from attack readiness to learning stance. The Warbeast tentatively takes the pencil, his massive claws looking absurdly delicate against the tiny wood. His grip is initially awkward, the pencil looking like a toothpick in his grasp. He holds it with the concentrated care of someone handling unstable explosives, every movement precise and measured. The contrast between his destructive capability and this simple object becomes almost comical. Yet Dave watches without reaction, his face remaining neutral. The only sound is the hum of the station's ventilation system and the faint buzz of the sharpener's motor. His first attempt snaps the point. He presses too hard, his clawed fingers applying pressure designed for crushing armor plate rather than guiding wood. The pencil tip breaks with a dry crack, sending wood shavings drifting to the floor. He freezes, expecting reprimand or laughter. But Dave simply selects another pencil from the pile and offers it without comment. The second attempt succeeds. His massive claw guides the pencil into the sharpener with surprising delicacy, the motor whirring as it peels away wood to reveal perfect graphite beneath. In that moment, he experiences human pedagogy. Patient, respectful, and devastatingly effective. There's no criticism for the failed attempt, no praise for the success, just the quiet acknowledgement that learning involves both outcomes. The warbeast examines the perfectly sharpened pencil, rotating it in his claws to study the precise conical point. He understands suddenly that humanity's true strength lies in this transfer of skill, this calm assumption that anyone can learn anything with proper guidance. The realization settles deeper than any battle lesson ever had. This single interaction would trigger a galactic reassessment that began with the warbeast carefully placing the sharpened pencil beside the others, his movements now measured with new understanding. Cracks Thor's report to the Galactic Council caused immediate panic. The destroyer compiled a formal assessment that detailed humanity's unconscious mastery of complex skills, focusing particularly on their ability to achieve expert-level performance in mundane tasks without recognizing their own proficiency. His transmission included sensor readings, psychological profiles, and footage of the pencil sharpening incident, all annotated with his increasingly concerned commentary. The report noted how humans approach basic activities, with the focus and precision most species reserved for military operations or scientific. Research Council channels erupted with debates and emergency consultations about this seemingly primitive but unnervingly competent species. Emergency sessions convened across multiple star systems as ambassadors and military advisors tried to process the implications. The normal bureaucratic slow dance of galactic governance accelerated into something approaching frantic activity. Emergency protocols normally reserved for supernova events or plague outbreaks were activated to address what they were calling the human competency anomaly. It was like discovering your quiet neighbor could disassemble and reassemble nuclear reactors for fun. Suddenly, every casual interaction takes on new significance. Systems that democratize expertise appear, strategically unpredictable to hierarchical structures, creating legitimate security concerns for civilizations built on specialized knowledge classes. When every citizen potentially possesses skills that would qualify as elite training in other cultures, it makes threat assessment nearly impossible. Military planners found themselves staring at footage of grandmothers knitting complicated patterns while watching television, their hands moving with automatic precision that suggested advanced neural patterning. Engineers analyzed children building elaborate structures with simple blocks, their spatial reasoning exceeding most species' architectural software. The Council reviews footage of human basic life skills that appear as advanced military technology to outside observers. They watch a chef chopping vegetables at speeds that suggest enhanced reflexes or cybernetic augmentation. A mechanic diagnosing engine problems by sound alone gets classified as advanced audio analysis capability. Even something as simple as a parent calming a crying child gets interpreted as sophisticated emotional manipulation techniques. The analysts work through the night, their assessment categories becoming increasingly desperate as they try to fit human normal into their existing framework. They witness origami being classified as molecular level, material manipulation and parallel parking as supernatural spatial awareness. A teenager solving a Rubik's Cube in seconds gets flagged as potential computational enhancement. The Council's scientific advisors suggest humans might have evolved some form of distributed consciousness or collective intelligence to explain how such skills become universal. Military strategists argue that a species where average citizens can tie complex knots, bake with chemical precision, and repair machinery with basic tools represents an unquantifiable threat. Human normal is galactic exceptional. Their response would be drastic and unprecedented, born from the realization that they weren't dealing with a military threat, but a cultural phenomenon that challenged their fundamental understanding of capability and expertise. The emergency sessions stretched through multiple planetary rotations as different factions proposed solutions ranging from immediate containment to attempted assimilation. The only consensus was that standard diplomatic and military approaches would be useless against a civilization that didn't recognize its own extraordinary nature. And then they discovered how humans share this terrifying knowledge. Council investigators assigned to study human behavior asked basic questions about skill acquisition, starting with simple examples like paper folding or vehicle maneuvering. They approached a human civil engineer who was demonstrating origami to children in a public park, asking through translation devices how long such complex material manipulation required to master. The investigator expected to hear about years of specialized training or perhaps genetic enhancement programs. The human responded while folding a perfect crane with one hand, suggesting it took about 5 minutes if you watched the right tutorial. He mentioned something called YouTube, with the casualness one might discuss the weather. The tension in the investigation team became palpable as that response translated across multiple languages. The humans claimed that advanced spatial manipulation could be learned in minutes, sent shockwaves through galactic intelligence networks. Analysts rechecked their equipment, suspecting translation errors or some form of psychological deception. They repeated the question to other humans across different activities: a driver parallel parking, a cook performing knife skills, a student solving complex mathematical problems. The answers varied slightly but carried the same terrifying theme: learning platforms, online tutorials, free knowledge sharing. It's like finding out nuclear launch codes are broadcast on public access television with cheerful instructors encouraging home practice cultures that treat expertise as common currency rather than scarce capital, represent a fundamental challenge to power structures built on knowledge hoarding. Galactic civilization largely operated on mentorship models and restricted access to specialized training, maintaining social hierarchies through controlled information distribution. The human approach of making competence available to anyone with internet access destabilized centuries of political and military planning. Intelligence reports started noting that human janitors could repair complex machinery using video guides, while their accountants often understood advanced mathematics from free online courses. The very concept of expert began losing meaning in their assessments. The realization dawns that humans don't guard their most dangerous capabilities. They give them away for free through digital platforms that anyone can access. Military strategists watched in horror as tutorials demonstrated everything from lockpicking to emergency surgery to advanced combat techniques, all available without security clearance or background checks. The Council's Psychological Profiling Division concluded that humans considered teaching to be a fundamental social good rather than a strategic asset. Their cultural imperative to share knowledge outweighed any concept of information security that other species understood. This democratization of excellence becomes the Council's primary concern. Humanity appears dangerous not through aggression, but through the ease with which they teach. Their willingness to turn every citizen into a potential expert in multiple fields creates a population that's strategically unpredictable and resilient in ways no military could counter. Analysts note that defeating humans would require not just overcoming their current capabilities, but also preventing them from learning new ones overnight via these teaching platforms. The assessment concludes that human civilization represents a constantly evolving threat, not because they seek conflict, but because they can't stop competently adapting to challenges. So they made a decision that would change interstellar policy forever, based on the understanding that humanity's teaching infrastructure represented a greater strategic concern than their weapons or technology. The council chambers fell silent as the implications settled over the assembled delegates, their normal diplomatic protocols suddenly inadequate for addressing a civilization that treated mastery as community property rather than national security. Earth became the galaxy's first benevolent quarantine zone. The council implemented a 50-parsec protected zone around human space, not to contain aggression, but to prevent ecological cultural contamination. They established monitoring stations along the perimeter, staffed by anthropologists and cultural containment specialists, rather than military personnel. The declaration specifically emphasized that humanity posed no direct threat, The concern was what might happen if their approach to competence spread unchecked through galactic society. Shipping lanes were rerouted, diplomatic channels were filtered through buffer species, and observation protocols were established to study human development without direct interaction. This creates a paradox for interstellar relations. The Council acknowledges humanity's stabilizing influence. Their systems work with remarkable efficiency. Their conflicts resolve with surprising diplomacy. Their technology develops at rates that would cause economic chaos if introduced elsewhere. Yet they must protect the galaxy from humanity's contagious competence. It's like putting a sign that says "Caution Genius at Work" around an entire planet, warning visitors that exposure might unexpectedly improve their capabilities. Trading partners receive detailed briefings about maintaining cultural distance while conducting business. Quarantine policies typically address biological threats, but cultural and intellectual contamination can be equally disruptive to established systems. The Council's risk assessment teams note that human knowledge transfer operates like an intellectual virus. Once introduced to a population, it transforms their relationship with expertise itself. Their reports cite examples of minor interactions where human troubleshooting advice accidentally optimized alien manufacturing processes, or casual cooking tips revolutionized entire culinary traditions. The concern isn't that humans would intentionally disrupt other civilizations, but that their helpful nature might accidentally dismantle centuries of cultural development. The unofficial codename emerges in diplomatic circles, the place where beings accidentally become excellent at things. Ambassadors exchange alarmed reports of junior staffers who spent time in human space, returning with unexpectedly refined skills. A trade negotiator comes back able to repair complex machinery using human diagnostic methods. A cultural attaché starts solving mathematical problems that previously required specialized equipment. The pattern suggests that mere exposure to human problem-solving approaches creates competency leaks that bypass normal training protocols. Earth remains open for civilian commerce, but direct military or scientific contact faces strict limitations. Merchant vessels can trade for human goods but receive warnings about downloading entertainment media or educational content. The real threat assessment focuses on humans teaching others to outperform their rivals, not through deliberate action, but through their inherent pedagogical approach. A human engineer explaining basic mechanics to an alien technician might accidentally transfer centuries of refined engineering philosophy in a single conversation. Their troubleshooting methods alone could make entire technical certification systems obsolete. The quarantine stands as the most peculiar diplomatic arrangement in galactic history, a protected status usually reserved for fragile, pre-spaceflight civilizations now applied to one of the most capable species ever encountered. Observation satellites monitor human development from safe distances, their sensors tracking everything from educational broadcasting patterns to workplace efficiency metrics. The data streams back to analysis centers where specialists try to understand how humanity achieved such widespread competence without centralized planning or apparent effort. And so, humanity's greatest defense became its most ordinary attribute, their casual excellence now shielded by the very concern it generates. The same capability that confused a war beast now protects an entire civilization through strategic isolation. Trading partners follow strict protocols when interacting with human merchants, careful not to ask too many questions or accept unsolicited advice. The most dangerous thing about humans isn't what they can do, but how easily they might teach others to do it better. Humanity's real weapon wasn't force. It was weaponized competence that operated below their own awareness. The Galactic Council finally grasped that humans defend their home not through military might, but through ubiquitous, unintentional excellence woven into their daily existence. Their security doesn't come from border patrols or planetary shields, but from the simple fact that their civilization functions with a baseline competency that other species would consider elite specialization. The Council's analysts kept looking for centralized defensive systems and found only distributed excellence operating through normal civilian activities. This creates an insoluble defensive problem for any potential aggressor. How do you counter a species that can't help being casually excellent at everything they attempt? Their engineers perform complex calculations as mental exercises while waiting for coffee. Their children solve spatial problems that would challenge most species' navigation computers. Their artists work with color theory that matches advanced optical science. There's no command structure to target, no specialized military class to eliminate, just a population that treats high-level competence as normal behavior. It's like trying to fight against gravity itself. The defense is inherent, constant, and requires no conscious effort or energy expenditure from the defenders. Systems that integrate excellence into everyday functioning are more resilient than those that rely on specialized defensive measures. Military academies can be bombed, training facilities destroyed, command centers disrupted, but human competence exists in their parenting styles, their hobbyist communities, their approach to problem-solving while cooking dinner. A species that treats expertise as common knowledge rather than specialized training creates a defensive depth that can't be eliminated through conventional warfare. Their resilience comes from not recognizing their own exceptionalism. They'll just keep being competently human regardless of external threats. The Council's executive summary argues for do not disturb under any circumstance classification after months of analysis. Their risk assessment concludes that engagement with humanity carries higher potential for cultural disruption than any observable military threat. The reports note that human civilians routinely demonstrate skills that would qualify as elite training in other civilizations, all while considering these abilities utterly ordinary. The classification isn't based on what humans might do intentionally, but on what they can't help doing through normal existence. They acknowledge that humans recalibrate galactic power dynamics without firing a shot, simply by being themselves. Their presence in any system introduces competency benchmarks that can destabilize centuries of social organization. Trading partners find their workers questioning inefficient practices after observing human methods. Military advisors note their troops developing unexpected skills after limited exposure to human troubleshooting approaches. The Council's final determination places humanity in a unique category: benign existential disruptors whose mere existence challenges galactic norms, and it all started with that humming sound that drew a war beast away from conquest and toward a maintenance bay where a man sharpened pencils with unconscious perfection. The rhythm that seemed so ominous proved to be just another example of humans doing ordinary things with extraordinary competence. That specific combination of mundane activity and exceptional execution became the template for understanding an entire species' relationship with capability itself. The Council's policy of respectful distance originated from recognizing that humanity's most dangerous quality was also their most invisible one. That pencil sharpener became a symbol of galactic power recalibration. Krex Thor's last sight of Earth Station Alpha wasn't some grand weapons array or commanding officer. It was Dave Jenkins maintaining his simple ritual in the maintenance bay, the electric hum of the sharpener just audible over the station's ventilation system. The war beast watched through his viewport as the human worked with the same methodical patience he'd shown hours earlier. Completely unaware he'd become the focal point of interstellar policy. The scene looked like something from a civilian workshop, not a strategic military installation. The contrast between the cosmic scale of the implications and the mundane nature of the activity creates cognitive dissonance for any observer. Here was a being whose casual competence had reshaped galactic diplomacy, performing a task most civilizations would assign to juveniles or machines. His movements remained economical and precise, each pencil receiving the same careful attention. The war beast's sensors could detect the exact consistency of the points being produced, their geometric perfection matching what advanced manufacturing systems would struggle to achieve. Yet the human treated this excellence as routine maintenance work. The hum of a pencil sharpener now carries more strategic weight than the roar of a plasma cannon in certain diplomatic circles. That specific sound pattern has been analyzed across multiple scientific disciplines, its psychological impact studied by xenopsychologists trying to understand human influence. Military strategists have run simulations comparing weapons demonstrations against footage of humans performing skilled manual tasks, finding the latter often has greater deterrent effect on potential aggressors. The knowledge that any human might be casually perfecting some ordinary skill at any moment creates uncertainty that traditional military posturing cannot match. Symbols gain power through their unexpected association with significant outcomes, often more than through inherent impressiveness. That particular model of pencil sharpener now appears in intelligence briefings as an example of human technological philosophy. Its simple design and consistent performance represent values that concern planners accustomed to complex systems. The fact that humans achieve such precision with basic tools suggests capabilities that scale unpredictably when applied to more advanced technology. A species that perfects pencil sharpening might approach energy weapons or quantum computing with similar casual excellence. The war beast realizes that human potential manifests in quiet, everyday acts that look trivial but prove transformative. He watches Dave finish the last pencil, clean the sharpener's blade with a small brush, and return to his other maintenance duties. There's no ceremony, no recognition of the significance his actions have taken on. The human simply moves to the next task with the same focused competence, his attention already shifting to checking air filtration levels. The war beast's combat systems remain silent. Their threat assessment protocols finally recalibrated to recognize that humanity's true power lies in their approach to ordinary activities. The simple act of sharpening pencils becomes the anchor for understanding an entire species' relationship with competence. It represents how humans turn repetition into refinement, how they find satisfaction in perfecting small things, how they distribute expertise across their population without fanfare. That maintenance base scene becomes the reference point for analyzing everything from human education systems to their manufacturing processes. The War Beast's Encounter Report will spend multiple sections analyzing those few minutes of pencil sharpening, trying to decode the cultural values embedded in such a simple act. This revelation would echo across star systems as the image of Dave Jenkins at his workbench circulates through diplomatic channels. The contrast between the humble setting and the profound implications creates a cognitive shift in how observers perceive human capability. Galactic strategists begin looking past military installations and technological achievements to study everyday human activities, searching for similar examples of unconscious excellence manifesting in ordinary actions. The understanding spreads that humanity's strength lies not in what they build for conflict, but in how they approach everything they do. What truly unsettled the aliens was how humans teach. The Galactic Council reviews countless examples of human knowledge transfer after the pencil sharpening incident, analyzing everything from parenting techniques to online tutorials. Their cultural analysts spend weeks observing how humans pass skills between generations, their reports growing increasingly concerned with each new discovery. They watch mothers teaching children to tie shoes with patient repetition, instructors guiding students through complex mathematics without condescension, strangers sharing specialized knowledge on internet forums without expectation of reward. The patterns emerge slowly but consistently across every human interaction involving learning. They observe that humans approach teaching with patience, respect, and an assumption that anyone can learn anything. A radical concept in many galactic cultures where knowledge often remains segregated by class or species. A master carpenter will show an apprentice the same technique dozens of times without frustration. A software engineer will explain coding principles to complete beginners with genuine enthusiasm. There's this underlying belief that competence isn't innate but developable, that expertise should be shared rather than guarded. It's like watching someone give away the formula for immortality to strangers on the street, except the humans don't recognize the value of what they're distributing. Repetitive auditory patterns can indeed enhance focus and performance, but often through mundane psychological mechanisms rather than secret technology. The researchers note that the rhythm matches optimal pacing for manual tasks, creating a meditative state that improves consistency. The specific frequency falls within ranges known to reduce stress and increase concentration across multiple species. There's nothing inherently special about the sound itself. It's the application that matters, the way humans use these simple auditory cues to optimize their performance. The specialists reluctantly conclude that the humming serves exactly the purpose it appears to, helping maintain work rhythm. After extensive analysis, they determine it's just an advertising jingle from Dave's childhood that helps him maintain rhythm. The tune comes from a cereal commercial that aired decades earlier, something that got stuck in his head and never left. There are no hidden messages, no advanced frequencies, no psychological manipulation techniques. The researchers trace the melody to its source through human media archives, finding the original recording with its cheerful lyrics about breakfast nutrition. The contrast between their sophisticated analysis and the mundane reality creates another layer of cognitive dissonance in their assessment reports. The fact that humans use such ordinary methods to achieve extraordinary results becomes the most frightening conclusion of all. Their instruments had detected perfection in the pencil points, consistency in the manual movements, and now this, a childhood jingle serving as the foundation for precision work. The realization settles that humanity's capabilities don't stem from advanced technology or secret techniques, but from their ability to extract maximum performance from minimal inputs. They turn advertising earworms into productivity tools and office supplies into instruments of precision, all without recognizing how extraordinary this adaptive efficiency appears to outside observers. This pattern would repeat across every aspect of human activity they studied, from their educational methods to their social organization. The acoustic specialists pack away their equipment, their final report noting that human excellence often stems from simple, even trivial sources that other civilizations would disregard. The humming joins the pencil sharpening and the paperwork as another example of how humans achieve remarkable outcomes through apparently ordinary means. Their assessment concludes that the true threat isn't what humans can do with specialized tools, but what they can accomplish with whatever happens to be available. Humans don't know their masters. The Galactic Council's final assessment keeps circling back to humanity's complete lack of awareness regarding their own capabilities. After months of analysis, the reports all reach the same troubling conclusion. Humans operate at competence levels they don't recognize as extraordinary. Their scientists solve complex equations during coffee breaks. Their mechanics diagnose problems by sound alone. Their artists work with color theory that matches optical science research. None of them consider these abilities remarkable. They're just normal human behavior. This creates a strategic dilemma that ties the Council in knots. How do you negotiate with a species that doesn't recognize its own power? There's no leverage point when the other party doesn't understand their advantages. Traditional diplomatic approaches assume both sides recognize their relative strengths and weaknesses. With humans, you're dealing with a civilization that might casually solve problems they don't realize are supposed to be difficult. Their engineers might redesign your systems as a favor. Without understanding, they've just rendered your technology obsolete. It's like trying to discuss calculus with someone who doesn't realize they're doing advanced mathematics every time they catch a ball. The disconnect makes meaningful communication nearly impossible. When the Council's diplomats tried to address human competency levels during preliminary talks, the human representatives seemed genuinely confused by the line of questioning. They kept insisting they were just ordinary people doing normal jobs, unable to comprehend why galactic observers found their basic skill levels remarkable. Unconscious competence represents the highest stage of skill acquisition, but typically in individual skills rather than cultural traits. What makes humanity unique is how they've elevated entire categories of skill to this level of automatic mastery. Their spatial reasoning, manual dexterity, problem-solving approaches, all operate at what other species would consider expert level, yet humans treat these abilities as universal basics. The Council's psychologists note that humans don't just have unconscious competence in specific areas. Their entire culture operates from this place of unacknowledged excellence. The Council determines that humans have elevated entire categories of skill to the level of unconscious cultural mastery. Their assessment concludes that humanity doesn't possess specialized experts so much as a general population operating at what would be specialist level elsewhere. This creates a defensive posture that's impossible to counter through normal strategic planning. You can't defeat an enemy that doesn't know they're fighting, can't outmaneuver an opponent who doesn't recognize the game being played. They conclude that humanity's greatest defense is their belief that they're just being normal, which makes their normalcy impossible to counter strategically. Their unshakable conviction that they're ordinary beings doing ordinary things creates a psychological blind spot that protects them from external manipulation. Any attempt to exploit their capabilities fails because they don't recognize those capabilities as unusual. Efforts to contain their influence stumble against their complete lack of expansionist ambition. They're not trying to dominate the galaxy, they're just being human, which turns out to be remarkably effective at preventing domination by others. And so the galaxy made peace with leaving humans alone, accepting that some mysteries resist solving and some threats are better left unprovoked. The Council's final directive emphasizes non-interference and respectful distance, recognizing that engagement risks more disruption than isolation. Their assessment suggests that humanity's development should be observed but not influenced, studied but not contacted. The policy represents the wisest course when facing a civilization whose greatest strength remains invisible to itself. Earth Station Alpha became a quiet beacon in the galaxy without changing a single procedure. The station continues normal operations, completely unaware of its new role as a symbol of human exceptionalism. Morning shifts still begin with coffee brewing in the break room. Maintenance crews still perform their scheduled checks, and the docking controllers still process paperwork with the same methodical patience. The station hums along with the comforting regularity of human routine, its daily rhythms unchanged by cosmic significance it never sought or recognized. Galactic vessels give it wide berth, observing from a distance the mundane activities that now carry unexpected weight. Long-range sensors track the comings and goings of supply shuttles and personnel transports, their data streams feeding into analysis centers light years away. Military craft alter their courses to maintain the quarantine boundary, their commanders careful not to approach too closely. Civilian traders sometimes pause at the edge of the exclusion zone, watching the station's lights blink against the starfield while consulting updated advisory notices about human interaction protocols. It's like a library that everyone's afraid to enter, because the books might accidentally make them too intelligent. The attribution of symbolic significance changes how observers interact with ordinary spaces, often creating protective boundaries around them that have little to do with physical danger. The station's familiar yellow corridors and standard-issue furniture become subjects of intense study, their very normalcy taking on layers of meaning they were never designed to carry. Researchers analyze the station's layout for hidden efficiency patterns, its maintenance schedules for evidence of advanced organizational philosophy, its employee rotation systems for insights into human resource management. Pedagogical methods reflect cultural values, and egalitarian teaching approaches challenge hierarchical knowledge structures across galactic civilization. Most advanced species treat specialized knowledge as property to be protected, with complex initiation rituals and access restrictions governing skill transfer. Humans instead operate on what the Council's analysts term open-source competence. Their teaching methods assume the learner's capability rather than questioning their worthiness. This represents such a fundamental philosophical difference that cultural translators struggle to explain it to Council members accustomed to knowledge-based caste systems. They witness humans teaching complex spatial reasoning through something called parallel parking, where individuals maneuver vehicles into tight spaces using mental geometry that would challenge navigation computers. They observe origami sessions where paper folding demonstrates advanced structural engineering principles. A child's chemistry set becomes a master class in molecular interaction. A cooking show explains thermodynamics through baking techniques. The Council's education specialists note that humans embed graduate-level concepts in what they consider recreational activities, then teach them with an accessibility that makes advanced competence seem ordinary. The realization dawns that humanity's most dangerous export isn't technology, but teaching methodology itself. Their approach to knowledge transfer could dismantle galactic social structures that have existed for millennia. If every being could learn anything with the right instruction, entire economic and political systems based on specialized knowledge would become obsolete. The Council's risk assessment concludes that human teaching methods represent a greater threat than any weapon because they empower others rather than simply destroying them. A species that teaches this effectively doesn't need military dominance. They reshape civilizations through shared capability. This led to the most peculiar diplomatic stance in galactic history, where the primary concern became preventing the spread of teaching methods, rather than containing military aggression. Observation protocols now specifically monitor human educational content, with strict filters on anything that might teach advanced skills too effectively. The Council establishes cultural firewalls around human digital networks, not to protect secrets from humanity, but to protect other civilizations from acquiring human approaches to learning. They've essentially quarantined a teaching methodology, recognizing that how humans transfer knowledge matters more than what knowledge they possess. The galaxy wasn't afraid of human weapons. They were afraid of human hobbies. Council analysts project what would happen if human basic life skills spread through galactic civilization, running simulations that show disturbing patterns of cultural disruption. They input data from observation studies, human knitting circles demonstrating complex mathematical patterning, home cooks performing chemical transformations with casual precision, mechanics diagnosing engine problems through sound alone. The models predict unexpected outcomes when these competencies enter other cultural ecosystems. They envision entire economies destabilized by human-grade efficiency appearing in unexpected places. Traditional craft industries collapse when average citizens can produce goods matching master artisan quality, using human techniques. Service sectors face upheaval when basic human problem-solving methods make specialized repair services obsolete. Political systems face pressure when marginalized groups acquire competencies that bypass traditional power structures. The simulations show ripples spreading through social hierarchies, with human-style knowledge distribution acting like cultural lubricant that reduces friction but also stability. It's like introducing photosynthesis to a species that only eats. You change their fundamental relationship with energy. The analysts note that human hobbies often contain embedded expertise that other cultures reserve for specialized training. What humans consider leisure activities frequently demonstrate principles of physics, chemistry, and engineering that take years to master elsewhere. The concern isn't that these skills are advanced, but that humans treat them as accessible to everyone regardless of background or status. Cultural exchange typically focuses on obvious technologies or ideologies, but mundane practices can have more profound systemic impacts. The Council's cultural contamination specialists note that human cooking shows might influence dietary habits more effectively than agricultural technology transfers. Their home repair tutorials could reshape manufacturing approaches more than factory blueprints. The real threat assessment focuses on these soft skills that bypass normal defensive measures against cultural influence. You can block weapon schematics, but trying to filter out knowledge about efficient vegetable chopping becomes practically impossible. The concern becomes not that humans will conquer, but that they'll accidentally upgrade everyone else through cultural osmosis. Their teaching methods and approach to skill acquisition represent a viral competence that could overwrite centuries of cultural development. The analysts project scenarios where exposure to human problem-solving methods makes entire educational systems seem unnecessarily complex. Their simulations show civilizations becoming more capable, but less recognizable to themselves, their unique cultural fingerprints smoothed away by human-grade efficiency. This fear of benign cultural contamination becomes the driving force behind interstellar policy toward Earth. The quarantine transforms from protective measure to cultural preservation strategy. Monitoring stations now track human media exports with particular attention to educational content, filtering tutorials that might transfer competence too effectively. Trade agreements include clauses about limiting knowledge transfer, with human merchants sometimes baffled by restrictions on explaining basic mechanical concepts to their customers. So they settled on a strategy of careful observation from a distance, establishing research outposts just beyond the quarantine boundary, where anthropologists can study human culture without risk of contamination. These facilities operate with strict biocultural protocols, their staff rotating frequently to prevent overexposure to human thinking patterns. The researchers watch human entertainment broadcasts, analyze their teaching methods, and try to understand how a species developed such effective competence distribution without centralized planning. Their reports circulate through diplomatic channels, each new discovery about human capability reinforcing the decision to maintain respectful distance. Even the station's non-smoking facility policy took on ominous meaning in the Galactic analysis. The Council's review teams dissected every aspect of Crack's Thor's encounter, including Marcus's casual mention of basic station regulations during the docking procedure. They analyzed the phrase non-smoking facility across multiple linguistic frameworks, searching for hidden meanings or strategic implications. The simple safety rule became a focus of intense scrutiny, with teams of specialists debating its potential significance for weeks. What humans considered ordinary station maintenance took on strategic dimensions in alien assessment reports. They interpreted the non-smoking policy as evidence of advanced environmental control and biological discipline. The analysts reasoned that only a species with exceptional atmospheric management could enforce such restrictions consistently. Their report suggested humans must possess filtration systems capable of detecting and eliminating particulate matter at levels other civilizations would consider undetectable. The policy implied a level of air quality control that matched what other species reserved for clean rooms and surgical facilities. To beings that communicated through chemical emissions, a smoking ban might appear like a ban on language itself, an incomprehensible restriction on fundamental expression. Cultural norms often appear as deliberate policies to outside observers, who miss the historical context and mundane origins. The analysts failed to consider that the rule might stem from fire safety concerns or health considerations, rather than technological capability. They didn't understand that humans had developed these regulations through centuries of experience with combustible materials in enclosed spaces. The historical progression from open flames to electric alternatives meant nothing to beings whose combustion technology operated on completely different principles. They saw only the end result, apparently perfect atmospheric control, without understanding the incremental development behind it. The analysts conclude that humans maintain such precise atmospheric control that they can prohibit entire forms of chemical expression. Their final assessment describes the non-smoking policy as evidence of environmental mastery that borders on the supernatural. The reports suggest human stations must have sensor networks capable of detecting individual molecules of combustion products, with response systems that can neutralize contaminants before they spread. They imagine invisible fields maintaining perfect air composition, with the smoking ban representing just the visible tip of this environmental control capability. Another ordinary human regulation becomes evidence of terrifying competency in alien assessment reports. The non-smoking policy joins the parking regulations and paperwork requirements as examples of human organizational prowess that appear strategically significant from outside. The Council's cultural translators struggled to explain that these are just normal rules for running a crowded space station, not manifestations of advanced technology or social control. But the pattern of misinterpretation has already taken root. With each new discovery about human society, viewed through this lens of assumed hidden capability, this pattern of misinterpretation would define human galactic relations for decades, with every ordinary aspect of human civilization subjected to intensive analysis for strategic significance. The Council established permanent observation teams dedicated to studying human regulations and social norms, their reports growing increasingly detailed about the most mundane activities. Recycling protocols became examples of resource management genius. Queuing systems demonstrated advanced crowd control methodology. Even human fashion choices were analyzed for potential tactical advantages. The distance between human normal and galactic exceptional kept widening with each new discovery. Those pencil points weren't just sharp. They were perfect. Galactic scientists analyzed the pencils Dave Jenkins had sharpened, expecting to find advanced technology or exotic materials hidden within the simple wooden cylinders. They subjected the writing instruments to every test their laboratories could devise: spectral analysis, molecular scanning, even temporal resonance imaging. Their equipment could detect quantum fluctuations and dimensional anomalies. So finding whatever secret gave human pencils their unnatural consistency should have been simple. The researchers prepared detailed forms for documenting the advanced technology they anticipated discovering, already drafting reports about human material science breakthroughs. They discovered ordinary wood and graphite, which made the consistent perfection of the points even more disturbing. The wood came from terrestrial pine trees, the graphite from standard mining operations, the paint from common industrial pigments. There were no nanotech enhancements, no hidden reinforcement structures, no exotic energy signatures. The materials were laughably primitive by galactic standards, the kind of basic resources most civilizations outgrew within centuries of developing space travel. This absence of technological explanation forced the scientists to confront a more unsettling possibility. The perfection came not from the materials, but from the human using them. It's like finding perfectly cut diamonds that turned out to be shaped by hand with ordinary rocks. The comparison kept appearing in the research notes as the team struggled to reconcile their findings with observable reality. Their automated manufacturing systems could produce similar results, but required precision machinery calibrated within micron tolerances. Dave Jenkins had achieved this using a simple electric sharpener available at any human office supply store. The discrepancy between the technological input and the quality output defied standard engineering principles that galactic science had relied upon for millennia. Consistency in manual output often indicates advanced cognitive patterning and motor control, even with simple tools. The researchers noted that each pencil point displayed identical geometry, the angle of the cone precisely maintained across dozens of samples. The smoothness of the wood matched what would require advanced polishing systems elsewhere. The functional efficiency, how each point balanced durability with writing precision, represented design optimization that normally required computer modeling. The scientists ran comparison tests with their own manufacturing systems, finding that their automated pencil production struggled to match the consistency of Dave's manual work. The scientists determined that each point has identical geometry, smoothness, and functional efficiency, a feat their automated systems struggle to match. Their reports note the statistical impossibility of such consistency emerging from manual operation without some form of enhancement. They explore theories about unconscious psychic manipulation of materials or hidden biological capabilities that allow humans to perceive at quantum levels. The more they study the pencils, the more the ordinary becomes extraordinary through its consistent perfection. Their instruments confirm what their eyes can see, but their understanding cannot process. They conclude that humans achieve machine-like precision through biological means, making their capabilities both unpredictable and scalable. This represents a fundamental challenge to galactic technological development principles. If humans can achieve such results without advanced tools, what might they accomplish with proper technology? The assessment teams note that human biological systems apparently contain precision capabilities that other species must develop through external means. This suggests human potential scales in ways that are difficult to model or predict, using standard developmental frameworks. This discovery would influence galactic technology development for centuries, shifting research focus toward biological precision capabilities, rather than mechanical improvements. Engineering teams would study human motor control patterns. Cognitive scientists would analyze their approach to manual tasks, and manufacturing experts would try to replicate their consistency without understanding its origins. The humble pencil point became a benchmark for quality control across multiple industries, its perfection representing both an achievement and a mystery that would occupy researchers for generations. Even Dave's humming was analyzed for strategic significance. Galactic acoustic specialists isolated the audio from Crack's Thor's encounter recording, focusing on that rhythmic pattern, twist, scrape, hum, that had so unnerved the war beast. They set up specialized sound chambers designed to detect subliminal frequencies, running the simple tune through arrays of analytical equipment that could decode ultrasonic communication or identify psychological warfare patterns. The researchers expected to find embedded commands or hidden data streams, perhaps some form of auditory conditioning that enhanced human performance beyond normal parameters. Their initial reports speculated about infrasound components that might affect neural functions or harmonic resonances that could optimize motor control. They search for hidden frequencies, subliminal messages, or psychological warfare patterns in the simple tune. Their instruments probing every aspect of the sound wave. Spectrum analyzers break the humming into discrete components, looking for patterns that match known manipulation techniques. Psychoacoustic models assess potential emotional impacts, comparing the rhythm to established methods of inducing focus or compliance. The specialists even check for encrypted data within the sound's modulation, considering whether humans might communicate through auditory steganography. It's like analyzing a child's nursery rhyme for encrypted nuclear launch codes. The effort vastly outweighs the probable content, but the potential stakes justify the extreme measures. Marcus still processes docking paperwork with the same focused diligence he's always shown. His clipboard now contains updated forms that include additional fields for cultural exchange risk assessments, but he treats them as just another administrative requirement. He issues parking permits and reviews safety documentation, his attention on the details rather than their galactic implications. The war beast's visit occupies about 3 lines in his shift log, noted as an unusual but ultimately manageable docking event. Dave still sharpens pencils at exactly 10:30 each morning, maintaining the ritual that started this whole reevaluation. His movements haven't changed, his focus hasn't shifted, his understanding of the task's significance remains entirely practical. He needs sharp pencils for inventory work and report filing, nothing more. The electric hum of the sharpener still signals the midpoint of his morning routine, a sound that now gets analyzed by xenopsychologists across 6-star systems. The Warbeast's visit changed nothing for them, and everything for the galaxy. Humanity's most potent defense remains their unconcern with being defensive. They're just going about their business, which happens to be excellent. Their focus stays on the work itself, rather than how that work appears to outsiders. This lack of self-consciousness creates a protective barrier more effective than any shield technology could provide. They aren't trying to impress or intimidate, they're just doing their jobs with the competence they consider normal, and that's how bureaucracy and pencil sharpening saved the world through the quiet persistence of ordinary excellence. The station continues its operations, its inhabitants focused on their tasks rather than their legacy. Their attention remains on the present moment, the form that needs filing, the pencil that needs sharpening, the docking procedure that requires review. The significance others find in their actions never distracts from the work itself, and perhaps that's the most remarkable thing of all. So the next time you're filling out paperwork or sharpening pencils, remember you're maintaining humanity's quiet defense strategy. That bureaucracy you find frustrating might be our greatest strategic advantage. Share this with someone who needs to appreciate how everyday competence shapes our world. Sometimes the most formidable defense isn't a bigger weapon or stronger shield, but a perfectly sharpened pencil in the hands of someone who knows how to use it. Our strength has never been in our technology, but in our approach to the work itself, where ordinary actions become extraordinary through consistent excellence.